loves you, baby. You're beautiful.
A couple of years, things may change when all the kids grow up and start wearing ties and going to the polls.
You ever have that feeling where you're not sure if you're awake or still dreaming?
Any member of the police department who has allowed himself to get out of condition will either get back into condition or be weeded out.
All right. I think we may have found another one to weed out. We're joined this evening by Kyle Piatt. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man, and you're doing a lot better, guys. Kyle is just recently out of jail. He was put in jail for an investigation, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, this is the crapper thing about being on probation, being on parole, those kind of things where they have their thumb over you. Apparently, they're allowed to take you in and just hold you for 5 days for an investigation, correct?
Yeah, that's how long they held me. Well, 5 business days, so the weekend don't count. You know, it's
Gotcha.
Monday through Friday.
And were you eventually, I mean, did they just say we're done investigating, we're letting you out, or were you given any details of why you were being held or anything like that?
They never did give me any details other than, you know, they just said that they could do this to me, and you know, they cuffed me up and put me in jail for 6 days, and you know,
Gotcha.
that no evidence against me or anything like that. You know, it's just a big sham. You know, Ponzi scheme.
And are you not entitled to know? I mean, is that not part of the paperwork that you received when and wouldn't just let everybody know you're on a parole?
Oh, I mean, they didn't let me know anything, if that's what you're asking, but you know, I don't know that they have to. You know, the way that they explained it to me. No, they don't. But you know, I think that the law does have some kind of standards and guidelines there that they're supposed to follow that were probably violated. You know, that I would have to talk to an attorney about, but. You know,
Well, and you know, like I said earlier when we were talking earlier, there's I get sent a lot of stuff, man. And when I see a video of a couple siblings having an argument, it's usually something that's not going to really rise to my attention. But
right.
when I saw what she did on the screen with the weapon, that really concerned me, you know, because that's beyond everything else. And you know, those of you that don't know, this is Carrie. This is Kyle's sister. Like I say, a sibling argument. You guys arguing over a landlord lease tenant thing, way out of my scope. But an officer getting that weapon out of their holster in an inappropriate situation is very concerning for me. You know, is this something? I mean. We talked earlier. You didn't sound like this was something that you expected from her.
No, you know, for anybody to pull out lethal force should be the bare minimum last resort option. You know, anybody, whether it's a civilian or anybody that's handling a firearm, that's like the first thing that they teach you. You know, about handling a firearm.
Right.
You know, and whether you're a cop or a firefighter or, you know, a veteran or, you know, anybody knows that.
Yeah. Well, handling firearms, I mean, there's so many different things that can happen, and you just question how this is handled and question the what's going to happen in a real stressful situation, in a real emotional situation. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And I know that she was brought up in the same household as me, and you know, we were all taught that as young kids about firearm. You know, like any time that you were to pull a weapon, that should be the last resort. That, you know, it's your life or somebody else's or theirs. You know, that you're
right.
gonna go and pull a gun on somebody is just out of the question. It should have never been done.
I agree.
It's not a tool that she needed to pull the wire. And she admitted in the video that she could have simply, you know, cut the electric off from the breaker box And
Well, that's not a landlord capability. They're not allowed to do that. And that's the other thing about this is when she's out there with those cutters and going to just cut into electric wires and things, a landlord has a process they have to go through.
right,
Um,
right.
and guys, there is a lease in place. I've seen the lease. The lease is pictured in the video, I believe. I think I put it in the either the video or the thumbnail.
So
But
some people were trying to complain that there wasn't a separate meter, but if you read the lease, it was actually part of her responsibility to provide this said separate meter if she chose to.
if she chose to, and choosing not to, there's still the expectation of utilities.
Right.
And so
No,
without the separate meter, the bill comes as one and it gets paid as one.
well, that's where we agreed on the $200 because like whenever I Googled it at that time and currently, if you Google how much 30 amp camper would draw in Tennessee, it says about $150 to $200 a month at a max capacity. So max capacity meaning I could run everything in my camper and be under 30 amps without blowing a fuse, right?
Right.
So I would have to run my air conditioning, my microwave, and all my electronics at the same time in order to draw a max capacity of 30 amps to get $200 a month, right?
Wow.
So I've already proven my fact there just with numbers that don't lie.
Yep.
And
guys, there's a Cash App shop up there that Clinton Hanson put up. This is Kyle's Cash App. I don't usually do a lot of asking for money or anything. If any of my viewers want to help Kyle out a little bit, he's living in his truck right now trying to get his camper back. The camper that you guys saw in the video, actually, I'll just go ahead and throw this one up there. This was moving day where you had videoed and it was too wet to actually pull the trailer out. Is that right?
yeah, and family had discussed it. My dad asked me not to you get in there with the U-Haul and chance tearing up the yard or getting stuck because I only had 48 hours notice that was delivered to me like 12 hours after that for me to be in Ohio. So I was already on limited schedule. I had to get in the U-Haul and go, and you could see that, it's pretty washed out and muddy. And, I didn't want to go in there and add insult to injury. And my sister's like, well, she'd give her anything else to complain about basically, or try to pull another, gun situation on me or, because with me not doing anything, I was already threatened with a gun. And then, what would have happened if I would have tore grass up or, ran over flowers or something, I would have.
Well, and now your camper's
really
gone. You get out,
right.
You get out from your investigative hold and your camper's gone. Nobody will tell you where it's at.
Well, that was gone before I even posted the video on social media. The camper's been gone for, since like the 12th of this month. Yeah, like the 12th of this month. I didn't go to jail until the 20th.
Gotcha. So you've been missing this camper and nobody will tell you where it's at.
Right. They won't tell me where the camper's at or what she did with any of the contents that was in it. And they're saying that she's allowed to do that and that there's no criminal activity or charges or nothing.
No, that's not accurate. That's not accurate. I can tell you a couple things about this. As a person who's involved in the towing industry, a camper like this would be, if it's going to be disposed of from property, it's going to be taken away by a tow truck or a wreck or a rollback of some sort. And it's going to be taken to an impound yard. And there's paperwork, there's documentation that has to be done on that and has to be turned into the state if it's done that way. Because it's an item that has a VIN number. It has a title that's registered with the state. It's tagged and everything, right?
Well, I've told them all this, and they wouldn't even pick up a pen whenever I called the sheriff to make a report. They just said we're not even messing with it, and that it's not a crime. I sent in voice recordings, to multiple people. I think you might even have a copy.
Well, and all immunity's right. That is theft. It straight up is theft, and it needs to be reported as stolen property because there's a course that they have to go through. If they're going to impound property that's left like that, they have to give you notice, and there's storage fees that apply, et cetera, et cetera.
On top of that, it's a dwelling. I was living there. That's breaking and entering.
I don't know how the law works as far as, the laws in Tennessee are different than Kansas, but the domicile aspect, that's another aspect. Who takes a home away from somebody?
Right. There's pictures of my kid and, just personal items, quilts from my grandmother that's passed away. And,
Yep, I agree with Clinton.
in the midst of all this, I've already lost a lot. My aunt died and I didn't even get to go to the funeral because of this. And, it's just all the way around. It's a very sad, tragic divide through a family,
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily like, like the cops or one specific thing. It's all these blanket of assertions and things involved, all these gears that are getting shifted, and it's a mess, to say the least. It really
Well,
is.
and then to have it amplified by a situation that didn't need to turn into that.
And I can't picture why people would be mad at me for putting this out there, and the only thing that they want to attack is me for my case, to attack my credibility and make it like, okay, well, this justifies this person doing this to this person. You know what I'm saying? That's the way that it should be looked at, is a cut dry, this is the problem, not all these things that try to justify the problem.
Right. Well, they're coming down on, instead of taking the situation seriously and addressing the situation, it seems like the only thing that they want to address is the exposure.
That's the way that I'm reading it too, and I think a lot of other people are seeing that too. Is like you're trying to rectify what you did by saying, well, hey, he's this, he's that. Well, you knew about all these things, and you even wrote an affidavit on my innocence. But whenever it's convenient for you, then you want to go back and use that same subject and make me out to be this monster.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you know that I'm innocent. So, are you lying then, or are you lying now? And then look at you write out statements that are obviously aren't true, that are sworn to be true by a law that you're sworn to protect.
Yep. Well, and I take it seriously. I'm one of those people that will send the email, and this was sent to the Tennessee Seapost, and that's the licensing agency. Now, I wasn't too impressed with the response that I got, but I can tell you for sure that the state agency is aware of that behavior. They've been made aware of it.
Well, her credibility is reflected in cases all throughout that community, right?
Well, has there been a move to put her on the Brady list?
I don't know. I mean, I'm so far into this so quick. I'm riding around with my life in shambles. I'm homeless, living in my truck. All my paperwork and everything that I had been building my case with has been robbed from me.
Well, let me go out and see if I can pull up the Tennessee Brady list, and let's see if she's on it here. So we got the state list. Here, let me put this up on the screen. We'll just let everybody follow along while I'm pulling this up. Guys, you can go out and you can search the Brady lists and find out if an officer's on it. It's a pretty easy thing to search. And if I can search it faster than I can run this. So yeah, we'll go down here to Tennessee. That's where she's at?
Yep.
This is a charge site. Let's get out of here. Well, you'd think it'd be easier to search. These are probably going to be all pay sites.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's pretty often the case.
Well, let's see if this one here will bring it up.
I can't believe in all that there was never a day work missed or anything, like for an investigation or anything. It was like,
here we go. So search by, so we're going to want to look for which department she's with. South Carthage, right?
Yes, sir.
So we need South Carthage. Is it not spelled like that?
SOUTHCARTAGE.
Let's try it this way with just the S and see what it does. Nothing there. John D. Nicola, are you sending me something, buddy? Nope. Well, I'm a dumbass. Bring this up and I can't find it, but she needs to be on the Brady list. In any case, I sent that email over to the Tennessee Sea Post to make them aware of the situation, because it's concerning enough that they need to be aware of it. And then, Kyle, I was a little surprised when I started, doing some searching, and somebody else had actually located another video that your sister was in. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Have you seen this video at all?
I don't think I have seen this one, no.
All right. I'm going to back this up and we can watch this video. This was put up by the Random Patriot. He's been doing a lot of work here. I'm going to turn on the volume here and let's listen to this a little bit. The female that comes up and to back him up here at the door, that's Carrie.
Roll down your window. Roll down your window.
Roll on down.
Now.
Because you were ordered to.
Okay. You got any weapons in the vehicle?
No, sir.
Need you to step out.
For what?
Now.
For what?
Because I'm telling you to step out.
For what?
For disorderly. Step out of the vehicle.
Sir, there's no...
You're going to step out of the vehicle or I'm going to bust the glass. Now.
Dude, man, you can't
You
do
don't have
this.
to take
Y'all
that
can't do
far.
this. Y'all can't do this.
Step
man.
out.
You're just mad because I come
Step out of the vehicle.
man.
You didn't show me anything. Step out of the
Yeah, I
vehicle.
did.
That back window open.
He's coming out. Step out. Hands on the bed.
Put your phone down. Put your hands on the bed. You got anything on?
I can record
You can
guys.
set it down. I don't want your
I
hands.
can record you guys.
Put your phone down.
No, I have a right to.
Put your hands behind your back.
What are y'all doing, man? What are y'all doing? Oh.
That's Carrie, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yep. I've heard some criticism of that arm hold she's got there too.
Yeah, it looks like she's trying to put him in a Kimura.
Oh, yeah, but y'all don't like to get cameras. Y'all don't like to get them.
They're doing too much there.
Well, and see, this is just a few months before. This is just October of 2024. How long has she been a police officer?
For some years.
For several years?
Yeah, something like that. She's been a police officer for probably, close to 10 years, I think.
Gotcha. And always at the same department, or has she bounced around at all?
I think she's bounced around a little, but a majority of it has been done where she's at now.
At South Carthage, okay.
I believe so. I mean, I don't know the whole, I was in prison, for 5 years, so that was like half of her career.
Right. And, now we also found out that you're represented. I did reach out to your attorneys and made them aware of the situation. You let me know that you'd been talking to them. Kyle's got an appeal going on the conviction. And so that, we'll just let everybody know that that's happening. And it's unfortunate that even though you can be doing the appeal and everything, they can still keep their thumb on you like this. And, I'm sorry that's happening.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm getting a lot of support from a lot of places, and is doing the best I can to keep my head up and keep fighting. And hopefully, maybe I'll be able to be a part of my kid's life, and get a chance at least possibly getting a fair trial would be great. At the least.
Yep.
At the minimum, I feel like I deserve that.
Well, at least a fair shake at trying to make it in. Coming out, I mean, you're already disadvantaged. There's a lot of employers, a lot of renters that won't take somebody with the record. And then, to have the added stress of being, under investigation and in jail for a week at a time is that'd be tough for me to handle, man. That'd be tough for me to handle.
Yeah, a lot of thoughts go through my head with that. And, I'd like to believe that they're not all connected, but sometimes it kind of feels like there's a chance that it is. I don't know. I don't want to be like throwing conspiracies out there, but
Well, there's an old saying, just because I think they're after me doesn't mean they're not.
right. A lot of the officers that were originally investigating me for the crimes that they thought that I was committing were all involved in this case that put me in prison. And, towards the rookie stages of her career, she was involved with those said cops, right? And trying to make a name for herself and all that. And, maybe they thought if they could put some pressure on me this way and turn the screw, that they thought that I might, give them something that they want. And whenever they didn't get that, then, things like this happen. And they try to make an example out of you.
Yeah. And, Tennessee accountability, man, this is the guy. He put this up. And then I'm going to, let's show this back up here again, because this young lady right here is impressive. The one over here on the left, that's Tiffany. And Kyle, you got a hell of a friend there.
Yeah, it's the Tifster.
She is tenacious, man. She was available to talk to us and let us know what was going on. She was constantly, supporting you, and if she could have gone in there and bust you out, and I think she was about ready to at times.
Yeah, we had a lot of people that were, playing the sidelines and helping behind, the scene, and, talking to me from jail and putting money on my phone, and, just trying to help me in any way that they can. Her and, Stacy Case, and, we got a lot of good people in our corner, attorneys, John Paul Ryan and Catherine, and, everybody involved. I'm very blessed to have the resources and the people that I have on my team. And, even though I'm struggling right now, I can imagine how hard it would be for somebody else who doesn't have the resources that I have, because I'm barely making it. I'm barely surviving. And, it's hard. I put everything into this, all my money, all my time. I'm risking it all, hoping that the justice system will prevail. And
well, I hope you're not disappointed, man. That's the tough thing about the justice system, is too many times it really does. It disappoints us the way it works out.
Well, I think, one sign of hope there was, like, even though I didn't get to vote for him, was Trump getting into office. I think that with him being in office, that maybe I'll have a chance at, getting some kind of good justice. And
well, and
I don't know,
man, kudos to you for thinking of just picking up the camera, because if you hadn't had that camera rolling, that wouldn't have been seen.
It's a bittersweet moment, because it's my family. And, I never really called the cops on anybody. And then, you turn around and it's a situation like this. And, a lot of people think that I'm like, picking on her, or I'm trying to settle a score. And, it's really not about any of that so much as, like, the big picture here is, I don't want that to happen to somebody else, or, God forbid if she did that to somebody, or even me, and accidentally the gun goes off, or
right,
whatever. Now somebody's lost their life or something serious, over something that should have never even been an issue.
Yep. And that's been a common thing throughout this whole thing, as I've been talking to people, you and Tiffany and others involved, that we don't want this to happen to somebody else. That's what everybody's saying all along. We don't want this to happen to somebody else. It's going to happen to somebody else, and somebody's going to get hurt. And that's the reality of this. And, it's odd that this is coming up, that kind of situation is arising, because tonight I went out to the store and picked up something, and I just happened to run into a guy named Akira Lewis, and he came up and talked to me a little bit. But Akira was a man that was wounded by a police officer here in town in an accidental situation. Thought she was pulling her taser and actually pulled the other one and did her thing. But man, I'll tell you what, that's just quite a coincidence that we see with him what really does happen, and a situation here where we're seeing the lead up and what happens before it actually happens.
And think about all the things that have happened off camera that there was no camera to, prove either side of the story. And, a lot of dirt was done that, people have gotten away with losing their lives, and it's sad, but things like this would hopefully set the standard to, improve training and mental health awareness, and, the prescriptions and everything that they get on, should be filtered a little better. And, who am I? I'm not perfect. I'm not trying to sit here and point the finger, but, what's right is right.
Yeah, but AB says it. You have rights, Kyle. Regardless of your past, you still have the right as an American to live in peace.
Well, it feels like they're awfully, hard trying to water that down to where it makes it right for them just to come in and do whatever they want. And, the actions after justify everything because of this, right? I sit there for 2 weeks with no electric, no water, while they're torturing me, and I'm calling the sheriff and asking them to step in and intervene, and nobody does anything. My pipes are frozen. I have no heat. It's freezing weather. Why should I have to do all that whenever my bills were paid simply because you don't agree with something about me? Nothing to do with our agreement financially or legally. You just want to attack my character and then come out and, pull a gun on me and then use the law as sword and shield whenever it's convenient for you.
Man, I'm sorry that's happening, man. And good job with your perseverance. I mean, there's situations where life can just shit on you and just keeps making it harder and harder and harder. And, it's a man that can stand up and just keep treading along, keep going.
I've been through a lot, and, I'm not trying to harp on it or make this, about me, because this is about everybody that these things have happened to, or they have somebody that they care about that it's happened to. And I've been through a lot, and I've seen a lot worse in prison. And, I'm hoping that maybe this will get people to look deeper into my story and see everything involved. And maybe it'll start to make more sense, and the more people that support me, get behind me, maybe that'll make a difference, and it'll help, at least give me a fair shot at a trial or going back to court.
Yeah.
I think I do.
Well, my main concern is a fair shot at not having weapons pulled on you.
Well, all that, if somebody's down there for a year and not doing anything, not committing any crimes, not bothering anybody, just minding their own business, and all their bills are paid, and this can still happen to them, because I wasn't out at the bar and had too much to drink or, anything like that. I'm not out bothering anybody, and I got these problems that just show up on my porch in small town USA.
Well, that is small town USA, man. We see that in small towns across the country, man.
Right. I'm not just in the city limits. I'm an hour away from civilization with no phone, no internet or anything. If she cuts all that off, they got these domestic violence situations where, the other gets mad and then, goes and pulls the phone cord out of the wall, and now they're hit with all these extra charges. But whenever she goes and cuts my electric and my Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff, how is that not controlling the whole situation, my communication, my, ability to heat my camper? I'm stuck there tied at the end of this post, taking the whipping that you and all your buddies want to hand out or dish on me.
Well, and I'll say it over and over again, when there's a landlord tenant situation, there's legal ways to go about that, to disconnect services or to cut the electric, things like that. You can't, nobody, and I've been a landlord, you can't just go out there and just flip a switch or cut a cable or something like that, like she's threatened to do here. And that was just nothing but pure escalation. And honestly, there's somebody around here that we all know. Her name is Courtney Shipley. And she is a city commissioner who has been mayor. She's not a city commissioner anymore, but Guys, I'm telling you, those of you that have watched my channel, doesn't this girl here remind you of Courtney Shipley? And just the smile on her face, and it looks like she gets enjoyment from other people's pain.
It's a narcissistic trait.
Well, that definitely meets up to what some people's opinion of Courtney is. So,
right, and she admits that she never even needed to be out there; that she could have just done that from the breaker box in the house. So that shows that this was all planned out and premeditated for her to come out and beat on her chest and bully and intimidate me. And whenever she didn't get the reaction that she got, or thought that she should get, then, she wanted to try to take it up the next notch and, amplify the situation by pulling out a gun and, threatening lethal force. Because a lot of people want to say, well, she didn't point the gun at you. Well, why was the gun ever drawn?
Exactly.
Right. Why did it ever need to be drawn in the first place is really what should be questioned. Because if I went into a bank right now and I pulled a gun, and whether they gave me the money or they didn't give me the money or I said anything or I didn't, it would still be considered a robbery, right?
Right. Well, and it's interesting. I had a very similar conversation with Stacy Simmons, our undersheriff, last night, because they talked about how we were talking about the difference between aggravated and a regular crime. And she talks about how aggravated is the use of the weapon. And I questioned her about that and asked her, because I've seen situations where defendants, just the simple possession of the weapon now was the aggravating factor. It didn't require the weapon to actually be used.
If I recall
that with me.
If I recall right, I seen her demanding money in the video, right?
So that definitely would meet the guise of a robbery in a civilian world. A person standing there with a weapon demanding money. And demanding money that you don't owe as well, right?
Right. And I brought it to your attention with the codes of a Tennessee servant acting in personal capacity under the color of law. That she's violating that statute to a T. It fits like a glove. Yep. And the prosecutor says no crime was committed. And it meets every statute of the crime that was committed.
Yeah, and there's, they may not be able to pursue the crime aspect of it, but with enough pressure, Tennessee CPOST can do something about that. The certification agency, they're the ones that are going to end up having to deal with this officer at some point if something's not changed about the approach now. And, AB makes a real good point here, man. Make sure your vehicle has dash cams front and back, man. And
the rubber's got to meet the road for us to start, getting anywhere here. And the more that we expose this, hopefully, people are going to stand up and say, hey, I don't want this to happen to, my family member or my friend or somebody that I care about.
Well, don't forget how you feel right now, because trust me, buddy, this is a long road. Anybody that you talk to that does anything in this kind of work, they're going to tell you that it's a long ways to any kind of satisfaction that you're going to get out of this.
I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. I've been doing it for far too long. And I know that you got to go in and be prepared to be surprised rather than disappointed, right? That's always better.
Exactly.
Because, if I go in and I'm surprised that something happened, I wasn't expecting that anyways, because I expect them to just brush it up under the rug, and that's what they've always done. So what makes me think that this time's going to be any different? I would be surprised if it wasn't, but maybe this time it'll be different.
Well, we keep saying that. Maybe one day it will be different. Guys, I want to shout out Tennessee Accountability. Thank you for noticing this, man, and putting it up. I saw it on your channel first and talked to you a little bit about it, and you helped me get in contact with these folks. And again, I'm going to put her, she couldn't be here with us tonight. Tiffany, one of her kids, had a little accident, so she's dealing with a bump on the head. But over here on the left side, man, she's a pretty woman, and she is definitely in your corner, Kyle. You've got an asset there.
Yeah, she's done a lot over the years, and we go back a long ways, and I got a lot of people like that. I'm a very lucky man to have some of the people that I have in my corner that are fighting for me, and anybody else out there that's willing to help me fight, and in any way, it would be greatly appreciated.
Yep. And guys, I'm going to throw it up there one more time if I can pull it up out of the chat here. This is Kyle's Cash App. And again, you guys know me. I don't spend a lot of time doing money talk. But if any of my viewers want to help Kyle out, send a little bit over on that Cash App and help him out. He's in his truck right now. They have his trailer somewhere. And as far as I understand, as an operator or past operator of an impound yard, you can't just take somebody's property like that and hide it and hold it ransom or just keep it away from him. He's got to be able to retrieve it and retrieve personal items from it. So,
right. And Ohio APA won't approve any of my addresses for me to be able to go home. So I'm forced into a homeless situation, and I can't go anywhere or do anything. I'm just kind of like stuck at the mercy of the current here, and it's a bad situation.
Okay, well, I appreciate you guys. It looks like now, Kyle, I know you had to accept some Cash Apps. It looked like some people are trying to send. You're going to want to check that and make sure that you're able to receive those.
Yes, sir.
Guys, those of you that are helping out, I appreciate it. And everybody else, anytime you see something like this, you got to say something. You got to talk. You got to step up. You got to speak out. If we're not going to, there's not going to be too many people that will. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Amen.
Stay on them, Kyle, and give me updates. Give us updates. Talk to Jason out there in Tennessee.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate your guys' help, and any kind of help or support I can get is greatly appreciated.
All right, Kyle. Take care, buddy. It's good to see you out of jail, man.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you.
Nice.